So we're going to do one more example using birth data, and we're going to compute the percentages of these births from the actual population in each age group. Okay, so here it says determine the populations for each age group using the birth rates and then compute the number of births as a percentage of each population. So let's just explain what that means here. So here is our chart. The first thing we'll do is find the populations here. We're only going to find one of them, and one is an example. One's in the book, one's an example. But this is the one we're going to find first. So we're going to use the birth rate over here. And that birth rate is per 1,000. So there is 0.2 births for every 1,000 women that were aged 10 to 14. So we're going to find the population because we've got births per population, births per population. And so that's how we can set up the proportion. Births, 0.2 births per 1,000, 2,500 births, or we don't know how many in the total population of 10 to 14-year-olds. Cross multiply and divide, and we get 12,515,000 women in the age group of 10 to 14. If we wanted to do this with Excel, which is a lot easier than doing each one at a time, we could go B4 times 1,000 divided by 0.2. And basically, we'd set it up on paper, B4 times 1,000 divided by F4, which would be right here. And then, boom, we could fill the whole thing now. So we're going to determine the population of each of the age groups. We're going to do one by example here, and this one's going to be 15 to 19-year-olds. We can use the rate of 22.3 births per 1,000 women aged 15 to 19. So we have 22.3 births per 1,000. That's going to be our first ratio, actually, right? I want to put that right here. And then the absolute number. You can think about that, too, while I'm doing it. So there's our proportion. Births per 1,000 women equal births per 1,000 women. Births total, women total. Part total, right? So I'm going to cross multiply and divide, and I'll put down the answer, and you can make sure you know how to do that. You can pause this. So there's our number of total women aged 15 to 19. Total births, total women, part to total, part to total. So now here we're going to find the now we have all of the number of births. That's the population 15 to 19. That's where that would go. And the Excel formula we would use would be this. Actually, I'm going to copy this down here. Because that's the population we're trying to find right here. We had this rate per 1,000 and the number of births, and we found the total population. And once we have the cross multiplying down here, we could have this is really an Excel problem, right? We would have x equals, or 22.3x equals 1,000 times 229. So let me you think about what, if I was starting from here, what's the Excel formula in there? And I think you can see that that would be, after you cross multiply and get x by itself, the intermediary step here, what you're really doing is taking this times this divided by this. B5 times 1,000 divided by F5. Did we need to determine the populations for each group using the birth rates before we can compute the number of births as a percentage of each population? Did we need to determine this before we can determine the percent of age group in each population? It's an interesting question. Give you time to think about it. And the answer is really yes. You see, there's a difference between this column here and this column here. This column here is the percent of births, total births, from each age category. This is the percentage of the age group. In other words, the percentage of this population that gave birth. So these are going to be completely different. These are part to part, where these are part to whole. So you can notice now that we have the populations of each of the age groups here. We computed the 10 to 14 was given as an example, and the 15 to 19, which we just did, and that's the formula for it. And then there's all the populations of each of the age groups. Now what we're going to find here is the percent of the age group that's giving birth, of each age group. This is the percent of the whole, so this would be almost 4 million divided by 4 million. So that's the whole. Of that whole, 5.78% of the births were given by 15 to 19-year-olds. This is asking a different question. Of the age group, and this one here is of all the total births, what percent of all the total births were there from all the age groups? And that's simply part the total, 6.25% would go here. This one is going to be this part to this total. It tells us of all of the women, 10 to 14, well, children, what percent of them are giving birth. This one here, of 15 to 19, what percentage of all of them are giving birth? So this is a pretty simple little equation here for an Excel file. It's just going to be B3 divided by C3, B4 divided by C4, and these all get filled in. Boom. B5 divided by C5. Notice these percentages do not add up to 100, just because they are not parts of the same whole. You really can't use a pie chart to visualize these percentages because they don't add up to 100%. You only use pie charts when they add up to 100%. You can, however, use column charts here. So this does not tell you the percentage of all births that were given by 15 and 19-year-olds. It tells you of all the 15 to 19-year-olds, what percentage gave birth. Two different questions. You always got to remember when you're encountering percentages, always to ask percentage of what? Now, if we skip the percentage step and just make a column chart of the number of births instead of the percentage of each category that was giving birth, you get something like this, which is not anywhere near as revealing as something like this. The number of births gives a very kind of a odd-looking, hard to read, not very informative graph. But when we find out the percentage of each age group like this, it gives us a really good idea of what happened. So just as a refresher here, we're going to compute the births as a percentage of the 25 to 29 population. So here's the 25 to 29 population right there, and that's how many births they gave. We're going to find births per part to part. This, again, is a part to total. It was births to the total number of births. So of the total number of births, almost 29% of them were women 25 to 29. This is of all the women that are 25 to 29, how many of them gave birth. So we have, all we're doing is finding this percentage, which would be part the total. And there would be our answer, 10.4%. Interpreting this, it means 10.4% of all the women 25 to 29 years old gave birth during the year 2015.